On this talk is the mere addition of HackCity Talk, and I'm more delighted to be your speaker here. I'm particularly excited about the topic we are going to be treating today, as it's familiar with most of us. Like literally everyone here is familiar to the topic. One way or the other, you've felt overwhelmed, or you're feeling overwhelmed about something, about life, about work, about whatever the case might be, right? So it's going to be an exciting talk. I'm going to be sharing my screen in a moment. So we'll see what we have for today. Thank you for joining once more. Where it refers to states where challenges or tasks at hand surpasses an individual's capacity or 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 scope, right? It's when and then there is this sense of being unable to manage or control situations, right? So in our fast and paced world, in our fast and paced and demanding world, it's no surprise that we often find ourselves with overwhelming arrays of responsibilities, challenges, and expectations, right? So today we're going to be looking at strategies basically and techniques to help us navigate through these turbulent times and emerge stronger on the other side. However, before I proceed, it is vital that we understand that being overwhelmed is a natural cause, right? It's very natural, right? The way I like to define it is a natural response we humans um, give to excessive stress. So basically, when your body, your mind, whatever is put under stress, when you're tensioned, your body, your mind gets to react in a certain way. So it is very natural, and we must acknowledge that being overwhelmed is a natural cause, right? So it's okay to feel overwhelmed, very okay. It's a sign that we deeply care about our responsibilities and we want to perform well in our daily jobs and life generally. However, it is vital that we learn how to manage and cope with these feelings effectively to maintain our well-being and productivity. So we're just going to be looking at some pointers that may indicate that one is probably feeling overwhelmed at a particular point in your life, right? So the first thing is you might be feeling constantly stressed. Like if you find yourself experiencing a persistent state of stress or tension, even when there are no immediate stressors present, it could be a sign that you are overwhelmed. So let's say, for instance, you just wake up in the morning and you're already tired about the whole thing. You're already tired about your job. You're already tired about the task at hand, even without doing anything that morning. So you are just persistently stressed, and it keeps on going day by day. You find yourself in that situation. You are continuously stressed for no reason. Like you cannot pinpoint a particular reason or a specific reason as to why you are being tensed or as to why you are being stressed at that particular moment. So that could be a sign that you are actually overwhelmed about something. So another thing is you might find it difficult to concentrate, right? So being overwhelmed can make it challenging, sorry, to focus and concentrate on tasks at hand. You may find your mind wandering or being easily distracted, and that is going to lead to a decrease in productivity. Of course, it is hard to focus on what you need to do. It is hard to focus on the important things you need to do when your mind or your body is overwhelmed about something. And sometimes, like I said initially, we may have different perspective or we may react differently to these situations, right? So some of us, we often develop physical symptoms when we are overwhelmed, right? Being overwhelmed can manifest in physical symptoms such as headaches, muscle tension, stomach aches to some people, weakened body and all of that. You just find out that you are not as strong as you used to be, or there's just something wrong generally with your health, and it is continuous headaches, continuous back pains, and wherever. Another sign that might be a pointer is that you might be experiencing, um, imbalance in your emotion, like emotional instability, for instance, like you're feeling irritable, you're feeling moody, or you have frequent mood swings, and you really cannot tell what the problem is, right? You really cannot tell why you are feeling this way at this point. Really cannot tell what is the problem, what is bothering you, but you're frequently having mood swings, right? And you're frequently just restless. It's like you're being put on an edge or something. Another pointer is that there's going to be a decrease in your motivation. There might be a decrease in your motivation, of course, like we earlier stated, right? So the way and manner you approach work, the way and manner you approach people, you notice that there is a decline, and for some reason you cannot tell why, but there is a massive decline. The way you approach your tasks, the commitment you give to your tasks and all of that, the commitment you give to your daily job, there is a decline. So being overwhelmed affects our motivation, it affects our energy level. Another key thing, and most times we fail to realize or we fail to understand this, even I myself personally, you'll notice that you begin to neglect self-care, right? Even unconsciously to you, you begin to neglect self-care. See, when you're overwhelmed, self-care activities like exercises, relaxation, spending time with loved ones, taking a back seat, just relaxing and all of that. All these things are significant. All these things are important as human beings that we are, right? So at a point in time, you just feel you subconsciously don't do this anymore, right? You have irregular sleep hours. You have problem with sleep. I was once sharing something. They say tech bros is just a joke anyways. They say tech bros usually do not take their bath. Anyways, that's a lie, right? But being overwhelmed can actually affect one to that point. You do not care about yourself anymore. You're just there, you're just doing things. Another obvious thing we do see is procrastination and avoidance, right? You keep on procrastinating things, or you keep on avoiding things. These are things you can normally do, right? These are things you do normally on your daily job, or these are things that you're naturally good with, but you just notice that you keep on procrastinating on such things, or you just want to avoid it. You just want to avoid that task. You just want to avoid that responsibilities. And also, all this can be signed. It's not mandatory, but one or two of these things can be a pointer that you are currently feeling overwhelmed about something, right? So let's jump to our next point in this discourse. Let's look at how we can now overcome the state. Um, how can we fight this? How can we overcome being overwhelmed, basically? So first off, the first thing I like to do is identify, like being clarified about something, right? So you need to be able to identify your stressors, right? So if you're feeling overwhelmed about something, it's because there is something that is stressing you, even if you may not be able to tell what it is at a particular point in your life, but there is definitely something that you are worried about. You understand, right? So you need to be able to identify your stressors, right? So that is the first step with coping with stress. You need to know, okay, what is it? Is it excessive tasks? Is it unrealistic deadlines? Whatever the case might be, yeah, you just need to identify your stressors. The second thing is that you need to be able to prioritize. prioritization. You see, most times we find this difficult. We find it difficult to do, right? To prioritize tasks, to prioritize our responsibilities, whether as developers, whether as whatever we are, often as humans normally, right? We find it difficult to prioritize, okay, this is more important, this is most important, uh, this is very urgent, all of that, all this comes under prioritization, right? So prioritization is an effective technique for coping with overwhelm. So you need to be able to break down your workload into smaller and manageable tasks, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that everything that is being put in your hand is being managed properly. Right. So whatever it is that you need to do to manage that properly, you just have to do it. So if you have to break your tasks into smaller chunks, for instance, then do it. Right. If you have to, okay, put notes to them, set um what's it called? Priority level. Yeah, that's what, set priority level to them. You need to do them. You need to be able to categorize your tasks. Yes, that's the word, categorize your tasks based on urgency and based on importance, right? So we also need to be able to set clear roadmap, all right? Clear roadmap, because the thing is, we are on a daily pursuit to achieving our goals, right? We are on a daily pursuit to um, achieving our big dreams or whatever the case might be. So you need to be able to set a clear roadmap of what you want to achieve, right? You need to be able to define it. All this has to do with prioritization, so you know what you need to do at that moment, at that time or moment in your life. Or so the next thing is you need to tackle one task at a time. So next on our point is you need to learn how to delegate. All right, you need to learn how to delegate things. You mustn't do everything. All right, that's why we work in a team. That's why we work with people. All right, we work with people with different abilities. We work with people with different talents. Right, even if you're a master of all trade, right, you just have to learn how to delegate things. You have to learn how to delegate responsibilities. You have to learn how to trust people with your tasks. All right. You have to learn how to trust people with things you know they can do. All right. You do not have to do things on your own. You do not have to do everything on your own per se. All right. So if you have so much to do on your plate, don't be afraid to ask for help. Right. You can delegate tasks to people when it's possible, right? So the essence of doing this is that it's going to free you up, it's going to free up, it's going to give you time to concentrate on things that are very important. It's going to give you time to focus on things that are very important. So if you know you can delegate a task, you have so much to do at hand, do it straight up. So the next thing is we need to know how to set boundaries. All right, set boundaries. The truth is, we, in our world today, we interface with people a lot, right? On work level, on personal level, school level, whatever the case might be. All right. So when working with people, you must know how to set boundaries. In essence, communicate your limits to your colleagues, to your friends, or to your family. All right. This is normal. Most of the times you think doing this is making you look, how do I put it? Doing this is making you look um what's the word? Somehow rude or segregative, but that's not the case, all right? Because we all have our break point, we all have our limits, we all have the extent at which we can be stretched. We are built differently. So you must be able to communicate these things to your colleagues, to the people you work with daily on daily basis. All right. So you need to dedicate time for relaxation. You need to time for activities that bring joy and regeneration to you. Now, the reason why I say dedicate is because you need to be deliberate about this. All right, you need to be deliberate. It's not like, okay, I'm tired now. Okay, let me just sleep. Right. okay, or when I just find time, I'm just going to sleep, or when I just find time, I'm just going to do this. All right. So you need to specifically like dedicate time to those activities. Okay, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to be sleeping by this time. If you're a type that normally pass out time with movies, it's totally fine. All right. I'm going to binge on a movie by this time, just so that I engage in those activities that gives me joy. I engage in those activities that build my confidence, that build my morale, that help me free up my mind, that help me free up my head. For me personally, I love taking walks. I walk a lot. I love taking walks, right? So you need to be deliberate about this stuff. It all falls under you setting boundaries for work and your personal life. So taking care of yourself is essential for overall well-being. So the next thing we're going to see here is seeking for help. Yep, seeking for help when you need to. Like I stated earlier, we work in a team, right? We are not working alone, right? So when you feel you are probably stuck somewhere, or there is a task or responsibilities that is just beyond you, you understand, reach out, right? Reach out, because you see the aim here is that you want to be productive, right? That is the bottom line of everything. You want to be productive, you want to yield results, you want to bring fruit. So whatever it is that is going to help you to be productive, whatever it is that is going to help you to bring results, just do it, right? So there's no point being stuck for weeks, for days, when you have people around you that you could just reach out to straight up and they are willing to help. All right. So we must learn to come out of our shelters. We must learn to seek out for help from people who are around us. Now, the important thing about this also is that it reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles, all right, when you communicate it, right? Because there's a lot of things that communication can do for you, simply when you just talk about it, right? Sometimes you get to discover, even amongst us dev, when you're probably stuck in a bug or something, and your head can't really think about anything at that moment, and you just share it among your team, and you guys start discussing on it. You start seeing solution. You don't know how it happens. You just start seeing solution when you communicate those challenges. All right. So you need to learn how to seek for help. It's very okay. All right. We all need help. We all need people. All right. So the next thing is this. Um, we need to learn how not to make work or life difficult for others, actually, right? As we are struggling with being overwhelmed, struggling or battling with this emotional changes or whatever the case might be, you need to also learn how not to make work or life difficult for others, all right? Because um, you might be someone's stressor, just like he said from the first slide, that overcome the first stage in overcoming this overwhelmness is identifying your stressors. All right. So you do not want to be someone's stress, right? Unnecessarily, you do not want to be someone's stress. So you want to be a team player anywhere you find yourself. And this goes beyond just your work. All right. This goes beyond your office. This goes beyond tech. This is life in general, right? So if you find yourself amongst group of people, and it's your responsibility, of course, to contribute and all, be a team player, basically. Be a team player. That's what we are saying here. So if you can manage situations, right, you can handle situations without escalating it, then do it. It's very fine, because you see, there is something I learned. There is something I learned while I was a project manager on the project, and there was someone who told me something. He said project management is a skill that surpasses tech. He said it's a skill that is applicable to every space of life. Because I tell you something, dealing with humans is the most difficult thing, whether we like it or not. Dealing with humans has to be the most difficult thing. So if you know how to deal with humans, you know how to manage humans, know how to manage resources, you have a skill that is going to set you for life. Trust me. All right. So this is all being a team player. So another thing I'm going to add here is share easier approach to goals, right? If you're working in a team, you guys have milestones to meet, and you know you have an easier approach towards achieving that. Share it. Don't keep it to yourself, because the only reason why we're there is so that we can hit our milestones. The only reason we are coming together on daily basis, following up, putting things together is so that we can hit a common goal. All right. So if you know an easier way to doing that, if you know an easier approach to overcoming a milestone or reaching a milestone, just share it with your team, sorry. All right. So next on our slides, this happens to be my favorite as well. You need to learn how to define your fears, just as you do with your goals, right? And I'm going to explain, and I'm going to show us a technique that I use to do this. Most of the times we only define our goals. Okay, I want to hit 5.0 this semester, for instance. That's a wonderful goal. Or I want to save up to $10,000 by the end of this year. Beautiful goal, wonderful goal. And sometimes we write these goals in our journals, in our diaries. Some of us even write it in our walls or wherever. You see, the truth is, most times, if you settle down to see the reasons why you are overwhelmed, sometimes the case might be that uh, you are afraid about something, right? And again, that is natural, that is normal. You see, but the problem is most times the things that we fear do not even exist, right? The things that we fear are not concrete. The things that we fear are just opinions, or they are just illusions in our head. All right. I'm going to show us how this is possible. I'm going to show us what I'm trying to see when I show you the technique that I use personally. So define your fears. All right. These are my fears. Okay. How do I prevent this fear? Peradventure, this happened, sorry. How do I repair it? All right. Because, the truth is there are some things that are outside our control. There are some things you cannot control, and you shouldn't be bothered about those things. Those kind of things should not be overwhelming you, right? But the problem is most times we cannot even define what it is that we are scared of. We are just generally scared. We are just generally afraid about something that we cannot even lay definitions to. It's just an illusion in our head. You understand? So define your fears. If you can write them on a sheet of paper, write them. Okay, this is what I'm scared of. Right, this is what I'm scared of. Genuinely, it might be something very little. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, good. It might be something very little. No, sorry, the previous one. I didn't know you had already. Thank you very much. Right, it might be something very little. Write it down. All right, I was talking about the fear, the tabular form, the tabular form. If you can help me with that. Yes, thank you. So here on my table, this is what I do. This is the technique I use. All right, so I define my fears. I write preventive measures. Okay, how do I prevent this from happening? And then in case it happens, how do I repair it? You see, when you go through this method, you're going to discover that some things are inevitable, all right? Some things are outside of your control. So this is the technique I was talking about, and you do not need to worry about those things. You do not need to beat yourself about those things. You just have to learn how to let those things be. All right. You just have to learn how to play along. All right. So next up, very key point. I personally also suffer from this. We need to learn how to avoid toxic productivity, right? So initially we stated that the bottom line of all this is so that we can be productive. We just want to be productive. We want to produce results, right? But you see, there is this thing we call toxic productivity, right? It's an unhealthy and unsustainable approach to work and productivity, because the truth is you cannot sustain it. You cannot sustain that momentum, all right? And most times this happens when we become emotionally attached to the work we are doing. Take, for instance, it happens, It happens usually with devs. Okay, maybe that's what I'm familiar with. It happens usually with dev. Okay, you've spent a couple hundreds of hours coding on a product. You spend couple days, couple months, weeks, and you become emotionally attached to it. Kind of, you understand. And even when you're not supposed to be making mends, even when you're not supposed to be making fixes, you just find out that you cannot keep your hands off of that work. All right. So it is actually good to be passionate. Don't get me wrong. It's actually good to be passionate about whatever it is we are doing. It is good that we do it well. It is good that we do it with all of our heart and all of our mind. You see, but when it becomes toxic, when it becomes unhealthy, it's going to affect even your product. All right. Because the truth is this, you are building whatever it is you are building. Let's use product, for instance. Whatever it is you are building a product, I believe it's for the public. And if it's for the public, and if it's for the public and you have reached your MVP, for instance, push it out. All right, push it out. You do not have to worry too much about it. You do not have to over engineer things. You do not have to think too much about it. All right, so just put it as long as you've reached your MVP. I mean, the product is for the public. So whatever reviews you want to be getting shouldn't just be from your emotions, shouldn't just be from your head, shouldn't just be from your imaginations. You want to get real life feedback from people. All right, so you need to learn how to, if you notice that your productivity is becoming toxic, like this momentum at which I'm going, I cannot sustain it. It is unrealistic to sustain it, right? You need to take a pause, right? You need to be able to identify and acknowledge, oh, this is becoming toxic. Take a pause and take a pause, sorry, and of course, relax. So when you are, when your productivity becomes toxic, it leads to you neglecting yourself. Of course, it leads to you neglecting rest. It leads to you neglecting relationships, families, personal self-care in general. All right. So next on our slide is this. I titled it Perfectionism is a prison. Perfectionism is a prison. I actually explained a bit of this on the previous slide, but I'm going to expatiate more further. Right? Most times we want things to be perfect. All right, we want things to come out so good, like 100%. But the truth is, we cannot always get things to be 100%. And the truth is, most of the things that we are working on do not even need to be 100% for it to be valuable to the public or for it to be valuable even to ourselves. All right. That's why I stated initially that, for instance, if you're building a product and you've reached your MVP, you want to push it out. All right. You do not want to keep it for too long. You do not want to overthink about it. You do not want to over engineer things. All right. So now we're going to look at the disadvantage of perfectionism. Now, don't get me, of course, we are all thriving to be good. We are all thriving to be experts in our various fields. All right, but I want us to look at this critically. So when you're so much obsessed with perfectionism, you always want things to be perfect, right? It's going to lead to a constant dissatisfaction and self-criticism. All right, you're always criticizing your work even when you do not need to criticize your work. All right, it hinders progress, whether we like it or not. It hinders like true progress, and it keeps you going in cycle. You actually think you're making progress, but if you look at it from the other end, you're actually just going in cycle. All right, so it hinders progress, it hinders productivity by causing over analyzing, by causing you to overanalyze things or to overthink about whatever it is that you're doing. All right. So it also damages your self-esteem. It also damages your self-confidence. All right. It creates fear of failure and reluctance to take risks most of the time. All right. So I'm going to share a little story with you guys. We're almost coming to the end of our talk. So my dad is actually an artist, a born artist for that matter. And there is this thing he usually do whenever he's painting. So he gets to this point in his painting and To me, actually, when I look at the painting, I'll be like, Dad, this is good. This is superb. Like, we are done with this work. But what he does is he puts it on a wall, step 3 foot or 5 foot back, and he looks at it, he tilts his head. And the next thing is that he's taking out his brush and he's making adjustments. And what comes after that is further adjustment. All right, because in the process of him making adjustments, he might make a mistake and then, oh, he needs to clean this, he needs to adjust this, he needs to adjust this. And then after several hours and hours and hours, we still come back to the same thing. We still come back to the same state that it was. All right. So you need to be able to state what you really want. All right. Okay, this is what I want. This is the goal I want. This is the level at which I want whatever it is. Let's say my goal, or I'm building a product. This is the level I want it to be, at least for my first MVP. When you've gotten there, push it out. It's as simple as that. All right. So because if you continue in that loop, it's also going to do damage to yourself, not just to your product. It's going to do damage to yourself as well. Next thing about perfectionism is this. We need to learn how to embrace our imperfections. Actually, we need to learn how to embrace. We need to learn how to accept our imperfections. We need to learn how to accept, how to know and accept our limits. All right. Because one thing I discovered is for you to grow faster, you need to be genuine. All right. When you are genuine, it boosts your growth. It boosts your growth. It more than anything, I don't know how else to explain this. When you're working with people, especially, you need to be genuine. All right. So you need to learn how to embrace your imperfection. Oh, these are my limits, these are my strengths. Accept your limits much as you accept your strengths. All right. So recognizing mistakes as part of the learning process opens door to growth, creativity, and of course, new possibilities. So letting go of perfectionism allows us to embrace our journeys and continuous learning to self-discovery and all of that. All right. So you want to step out of that prison. All right. Just step out of that prison. You do not always have to get things 100%. All right. So yeah, this brings us to the summary of our talk. Maybe for those of us who joined late or who missed out, so I'm just going to give a summary. So we gave definition to what it means to be overwhelmed. We say um, being overwhelmed means a feeling of emotionally or mentally, excuse me, it's a feeling of emotionally or mental instability, right? When you're overloaded by excessive demands or responsibilities, right? So we also mentioned signs that you're probably overwhelmed. We spoke about you being persistently stressed, even if there's nothing currently stressing you, difficulty to concentrate, physical symptoms like headaches, back pains, whatever, mood swings, you're constantly having emotional swings, or yeah, as the case might be, even when you cannot really define what it is that is affecting your emotion, right? So you also notice a decrease in your motivation, your energy level. Another thing is that you might find yourself neglecting your self care. You also find yourself procrastinating a lot, or you have sleep disturbance. So we also spoke about techniques and strategies to overcome this. So first off, you want to be able to identify your stressors, what it is particularly that is stressing me, identify it, give definition, give meaning to it, know it, don't just assume. All right. So you need to also learn how to prioritize tasks. You need to learn how to say no when you need to say no. You need to learn how to categorize your tasks basically based on the order of priority or based on the urgency, right? You need to learn how to break down your tasks into smaller chunks, into achievable milestones, basically. So you need to learn how to delegate when you're working with people, when possible, set boundaries, seek support or help when you need or when you can, and avoid toxic productivity. So it's important. We also spoke about the importance of defining our fears, just the way we define our goals. And we also spoke about coming out of perfectionism, because perfectionism is a prison. All right. So with all this being said, I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Um, yeah. If you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Victor, for that. I gained quite a lot. So, is there any question? Anybody? Does anybody wants to ask questions? We are opening the discussion for question. Anybody? Okay, Perpetua, please let's hear it.
Okay.
Uh,
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Please,
evening.
I didn't get the last fear setting technique. That is repair. I didn't get it. Thank you.
Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't get your questions quite right. Okay.
I said the last fear setting technique. He mentioned define, prevent, and then repair. I didn't understand that repair part.
All right. Mr. Mayowa, if you can help us go back to that slide. So yes. Thank you very much. All right. So just a recap. So you want to define your fears, of course, just as you do with your goals, just as you do with your goals. Write them down if you need to write them down, right? Just like you do with your goals, if you need to write them on a sheet of paper or whatever. So you also need to write down preventive measures, right? Okay, if this happens, how can I prevent it? All right, write down preventive measures. And then the last part is this: peradventure, it happened, right? I wasn't able to prevent it, right? It happened. Okay, how do I fix it? It has happened, it has happened. Okay, how do I fix it so that I can move on to the next thing that I need to move on in life, basically? You get, so that is just the technique. That is just the procedure. Yeah. All right, thank you for your response.
Okay, favor Brian. We can talk now.
Yes, can you hear me? Am I
Yes,
audible?
yes.
Okay, okay. My question goes to Victor. If you are in a workplace and then your boss is always pushing you over deadlines, then you're overwhelmed, you look stressed. How do you go about this kind of stress? Being pushed of deadlines, like each and every day you have to complete a huge amount of tasks, which is overwhelming. How do you go about that?
All right, thank you very much, people, for your question. So the first thing I think you need to know is this: if you're working with people, um, I believe your teammate or your boss should know your capability, should know your capacity, actually. And if you're being given tasks that are unrealistic, right? Constantly, you're given tasks that are unrealistic. You need to learn how to communicate, right? Communication is key when you're working with people. So we stated earlier that you need to learn how to set boundaries. In setting boundaries, you communicate your limits. Oh, this is unrealistic. I can't do this. There is nothing wrong in saying I can't do this within this certain time, because um, you would always want to prefer quality to quantity. All right. If it's going to take you more time to produce a quality work, then request for more time. So what is going to help you here is that you communicate, right? You communicate to your boss, you communicate to whoever you're working with, that this is unrealistic and this is putting me under duress. This is stressing me out and I cannot produce, or I cannot give out a quality work with this timeline. So communication is going to help you there.
Thank you, Victor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Victor. Does anybody ask question again? If not, okay. Right now I want some contributions. So if you have anything to contribute about what Mr. Victor said, anything, questions, contributions, suggestion, anything, anybody? Um, if none, I guess that wraps up. Or Mr. Shalasa, do you have anything to say?
Hi,
Okay, so I guess that wraps up
good evening, everyone. Can anyone
today's
hear me?
City Tech. Do you have a question? Okay, so I hope we've gained something, and I wish us happy weekend. Bye bye. Thank you for joining in.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.